One of the voices that we listen to every Saturday, certainly on Big Noon on Fox.
My voice has gotten a little better in the last 4 years.
Joel Klatt, everybody.
Hey.
Good to see you. How are you, brother?
I'm good. I'm doing really well. What a night. What a night last night.
That was great. I was texting with and I saw you after last night as well, texting with the group. The moment when the Packers were on the clock.
Oh, it was great.
It was my favorite part of the night.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there was some big news going on with Travis Hunter being acquired, and then the Giants trading back in, and then the Falcons trading back in. Just remember last year in Detroit too, right?
Yes.
Terrion Arnold comes out.
Yes.
Matthew Golden is there too, and it's awesome, man.
It's become one of those things that I don't think that we anticipate every year because we have so much buildup about so many different picks and teams and storylines. And I think what gets lost is the moment we can anticipate that moment when the host city picks and their player walks out. And last night, for it to be a wide receiver, I know we were building it up right before the pick. But man,
we were building it up right before the pick, saying like if it's a wide receiver, they haven't taken one since 2002.
Yes.
And then Mark Murphy, when he announces the pick, goes, and for the first time in 23
That's
years,
exactly right.
And the crowd went crazy.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
It's been a quarter century. They're like, when are we going to choose a receiver in the first round?
Yeah,
and then it happened in front of them.
And driving in, we have to kind of walk through the crowd a little bit.
Yeah.
And there was some Packer fans, during our walk, and one of them kind of taps me on the shoulder and was like, "We better not trade out," It's
like you have anything to do with it.
I was like, I know.
I'll pass it along.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll run that up the flagpole. I just love it. And so that really was an awesome moment. And Detroit got to experience it last year, and I'm glad that Green Bay got to experience it last night on a Thursday night. Back here on the Rich Eisen Show Radio Network, sitting at the Rich Eisen Show desk, furnished by Grainger with supplies and solutions for every industry. Grainger has the right product for you. Call clickgrainger.com or just stop by. Joel Klatt, who was sitting next to me last night, who will be doing the same tonight from Fox Sports here on the program. Okay, so
Rich, there are so many storylines.
That's right. So that was my first question for you. Which is the one? No. Which was the first one you want to pull on here?
Man, I like a lot of them equally. Let me start with this one, and it might not be the one that you would start with. Okay. I think that organizations, you make picks in one of three lanes. Two of them are really good. One of them is not. The two good lanes are you provide answers, or you double down on philosophy. The third lane is that you create questions with picks. Certain organizations can't help themselves but create questions. Atlanta did that last year. As much as we can like Michael Penix, you created questions with Kirk Cousins signing in the offseason and then drafting Michael Penix. So you create a narrative out of the draft. I don't think that serves your organization very well. And now Atlanta's having to deal with this. Can we move Kirk Cousins? Can we trade him? Is he going to be a $100 million backup, right? So, again, creates questions. I think New York last night, the Giants created questions.
Oh, boy, you did not.
As much as you can love, like, hey, we got Abdul Carter and Jaxson Dart. Is Jaxson Dart your third quarterback? Like, what? You signed two veterans, so are you releasing one of them? Again, you created questions. So there's more that you have to answer now moving forward, even if you like the pick. And I do. I like Jaxson Dart. He's a really good player. I liked Michael Penix. But here we are talking about, like, well, what are you doing? And unfortunately, for New York, they don't have a great track record that all of us can just say, like, well, I trust them. I trust with what they're doing with their plan. You couldn't make Saquon Barkley work. So, what are we doing?
Well, this is not your first Friday rodeo on a draft show on the Rich Eisen Show.
Yeah, and
the first one you did,
fans,
the first one you did in Nashville years ago.
Daniel Jones.
After that pick, you said it was going to essentially set the Giants franchise back years.
And
Joel Klatt found his camera.
Found his camera. That's a
I'm
professional.
just telling that to the radio audience. He found his camera. Looked straight down the barrel.
I forget that we're also.
That's okay. No. It's all good.
only.
So because we want to be fair and balanced, Brian Daboll last night was asked about Dart and when you're going to play him, and this was his answer. Let's play it for you.
In an ideal world, would you like him to just sort of sit and intern this year? I mean, you said you're fine with him sort of learning from them in the city.
Yeah, I'd say that'll play out. Russ will be our starter, and that's how it'll be once we get started here in the spring. And look, the process of developing a quarterback is just that. So we're going to do everything we can to develop him and bring him along. And again, I want to make this about Jaxson, his night. Young player, I think he's got a good skill set, and look forward to developing it with him.
Okay, so in that answer, that'll play out. Russ is our starter. Which one? More questions, and then then he says, "Well, I want to make this about Jaxson." But you didn't, because you drafted him into a situation where there's more questions. So, listen, I hope it works out. And that's exactly what I said about Daniel Jones. Mm-hmm. I sat right here. I really do. I hope it works out. I think that the NFL is better when the Giants are really relevant at the top end of the league, and I hope that they can get back to that. I love the Abdul Carter pick. I think he's disruptive. It fits what their division needs. You got to be rugged to go play the Eagles and their run game and Jalen Hurts and try to topple them as right now the kings of the NFL and maybe the NFC East. So I hope that works out. But that pick, trading back in, again, you either provide answers, like a lot of teams provided answers for young quarterbacks last night. And we talked a little bit about that. Jacksonville did it for Trevor Lawrence. Chicago did it for Caleb Williams. There was a few others. Drake May got some protection. So answers versus questions. So that was kind of top of mind as I walked in here, because when I walk in here every year, I think of the Daniel Jones.
So do we. +1 or +3.
Also, yes, correct.
Plus. Joel Klatt here on the Rich Eisen Show. Now let me set you up on Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
Why do you think he fell through the first round last
Well,
night?
I think that when you look at any player, but specifically a quarterback, you've got to weigh, any perceived baggage that they're bringing against their talent level. And here's the hard part for Shedeur. He's not his dad. And yet he brings that same energy to the table. Now, no one defends that family, that school, and that player more than me. And I'll be one of the first to admit that. And does that make me biased? Maybe. I don't know. But he's not generational as a player, and trust me, my phone will buzz after this. There's no doubt about that. But he holds the ball a little bit too long. There still needs to be some development. So when a player like that is meeting with teams and there needs to be growth, then what they want to see is a willingness to be taught. And if they don't see that, and they see a guy that just thinks that he's ready to be generational and listen, I'm good right now, I don't need coaching, I think that it cools teams off on that. Now, I'm not suggesting that's exactly what happened, but if you believe some of these unnamed sources, maybe that was the tone set in some of these meetings. Shedeur is a really good player. I'm just here to tell you, he's a very good player. Are there times when he drifts? Yes. Does he have the strongest arm in the draft? No. Does he hold the ball too long at times? Yes. But man, the kid is tough as nails. He's hyper accurate. I talk with Kurt Warner about this all the time. I actually think, and this is one of those like hot take type of things, I think arm strength is overrated. We've had great quarterbacks, all-time greats, with very average arms. Drew Brees, I mean, he wasn't throwing fastballs around the field. Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl throwing duck hunt ducks in Super Bowl 50. And granted, there was surgeries involved with that, with the neck and everything along those lines, but he certainly wasn't even close to what he was early in his career. So I don't buy into this idea of like, well, his arm is not strong enough. Yeah, it is. Look at where the ball, I'm a big believer in this, is the ball on time and on target. And with him, it usually is. And it's usually in a shoebox in terms of accuracy. I do think he's going to succeed. And then I said this at the end of the night, and I think that the draft has become such a big thing that I've got one more point after this. But the draft has become such a big thing that college players and families view it so much as a finish line. And it's just the starting line.
No doubt.
And at the end of the night last night, I said, if you remember, I know it was after we had gone back and we were on the other show. And I said, if I'm Deion Sanders, I'm a father. And remember, these are humans. This is a father and a son at the end of the day. I'm going to walk into my son's room or wherever he is, and I'm going to hand him a list of names. And those names are going to be, Brady, Breeze, Foles, Rodgers, Hurts, all these guys that have won Super Bowls, gotten to their second and third and fourth contracts, and not just contracts, mega contracts.
Russ
was on that list that I said, exactly right. And I would hand him that list, and I'd be like, that's the list you want to be on. It didn't matter what happened tonight. All of these guys, their name was called in a spot where they didn't want their name to be called. Maybe not location, but certainly in terms of the number next to their draft pick. And yet they ended up with confetti falling down on them. And a lot of those guys are going to end up with gold jackets. That's the goal. The draft is not the goal, guys. Hey, college players out there, the draft is not the goal. It's a starting line. That's great. And this is all wonderful. But it matters what you do after that. And that would be my communication point. And then the last thing that I would say is I think that college football and our lack of structure in our sport has done a massive disservice to these players.
How so?
Because most of them are more transactional than they are football. There's more so than ever before, we have guys that love being football players and what comes along with that and the transactions that come along with that and the brand they're trying to build, rather than guys that just love football. And to be great in the NFL, you better love ball, because it's a tough road. And I think college football does a disservice, because now all these guys are concerned about are their brands, their name equity, their NIL deal, where they're going to do that. We've got guys that have played. There was a guy drafted in the first round. I don't want to call him out by name because it sounds like I'm ripping on him, but I'm not. It's just a truth. There was a guy drafted last night that went to 6 schools in 6.5, 7 years, dating back to his high school and college years. Well, you can't do that in the NFL, man. So I think we do a disservice in college football with our lack of structure.
Joel Klatt of Fox Sports and my colleague on draft night and tonight on NFL Network right here on the Rich Eisen Show. You also said last night, before you threw it back to the studio, that the Browns have a big decision to sleep on.
Yeah.
They're 33rd overall. Could you imagine, Joel Klatt, if they had drafted Travis Hunter last night instead of trading out of that pick, have the chance to get Shedeur tonight with the first pick tonight?
That would be wild.
It would be just, Cleveland fans would be just going, let's go. We can have the Colorado Browns, the Cleveland Buffaloes right here. But they didn't. They obviously traded out of that spot. Which, first of all, they have 2 picks in the first 4. Would you counsel them to take a quarterback with one of those 2 picks? And if so, who?
They have to answer that position. The question. They have to answer the question.
They got Pickett, right? I understand. And they did get Flacco back, and he won comeback player of the year in 6 weeks.
That's great. But that's not a long-term answer.
But they also have a first-round pick next year. We were talking about how they and the Rams now have a leg up on that draft capital in the quarterback class of next year that everybody says is better than this year. So I'm setting the whole stage here about what you think the Browns should do.
So next year's quarterback class is deeper. Depending on who comes out, I don't know if we're going to have that elite level player.
All right.
But it is a deeper quarterback class. This one was very thin. I think we would all attest to, right?
Okay.
I really thought the Browns were going to trade back again off of 5, because it's like you started a philosophy of like, hey, let's just build up. We know that we're in a bad position right now with what's gone on with Deshaun, and we're going to take a year or two to build ourselves back into a winner. Do you remember when, I know this is a different sport, and I know that it's a different business model, but do you remember when the Houston Astros, like, knew that they were just going to be terrible?
Yeah, sure.
But it was like this, we also know that this is the foundation of something that we think is going to be great.
Oh, sure.
Trash cans aside,
nice.
It turned out to be great, right?
Sure.
I mean,
yes.
I live in Los Angeles, so you got to at least acknowledge.
Dodger fans are still talking about it.
Of course they are.
Right.
So I thought that Cleveland might move back again and stockpile and take that type of approach. But I love Mason Graham. I think that the question for tonight is interesting because if he doesn't go in those, if they decide like we're going in a different direction, like where does Shedeur go in the 3rd round?
I don't know. I mean,
like what?
You still have Vegas sitting there.
Vegas is sitting there. They probably have a future quarterback question. Pittsburgh maybe said, hey, maybe they know something about Rodgers that we don't. Okay. And that's why they went in their direction at 21. But if they're sitting there at a value spot and they're like, well, even if we get Rodgers, what if we could sit Shedeur behind Rodgers? And I know Rodgers is maybe not the
he's not Mr. Chips. He's what you're saying?
Right.
He's not going to be sitting down and say, let me tell you everything I know. Although Jordan Love speaks very highly of Rodgers.
So maybe.
No, I do hear
I just think it's an interesting.
Shedeur could continue to drop tonight, and that's something that obviously we'd keep an eye on. I wouldn't, what if the Jets, right? I mean, it's just a 2-year deal for Justin Fields. They could bring him aboard.
That would be a lot of questions.
No, I know. Well, I mean, there's more than one New York team that can draft more people to give questions than just the Giants, sir.
And we saw Arizona move off of a 1st after 1 year. Remember Rosen and then went to Kyler. You can move off of a 2nd pretty quick. So now, like the cost of this one is not prohibitive,
right?
So any team that's looking and they're like, well, let's see how it goes.
So let's say Cleveland does choose a quarterback with one of their first 2 selections and the first 4 selections tonight. Do you think it should be Shedeur?
Oh, there's no question.
No question.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, he's substantially better than anybody else available.
That's still available.
Correct.
Other than him.
Correct.
Who would be somebody that would shock you if they did take him? Everybody keeps talking about how Milroe, a DJ called him a lottery ticket. Like that you hit on him, it's mega millions. That his upside is through the roof.
Yes. Yes. I thought that his progress through 2023.
Yes.
I was like, okay, maybe there's something here. Remember, he played really poorly against Texas early. Texas beat them in Tuscaloosa, and Nick Saban benched him for a game against, I think it was South Florida, and he played some of the other guys, and then he came back in, and by the end of the year, leading into that, beat Georgia, who was undefeated, defending national champion in the SEC championship game, and then they ultimately lost that classic Rose Bowl to Michigan.
I was sitting in front of you that day.
Correct. It was one of your. I think that was the greatest day of your life. I don't want to.
Watching that happen with my wife and my children and my nephew sitting next to me. Right. Oh yeah, that was It
was close. It's a top 5.
And you were there with your beautiful family, photographing all of it.
It was bad. I'll say this publicly because, you're in the box and it's fun. And I had covered Michigan the entire year and know those guys really well. And so it's happening, and Rich and I are high-fiving, and Portnoy is in the
he was right next to us.
And I give him a high five. And then I look back, and there's these people recording with phones, and I was like,
But you were just celebrating with some Michigan
people. Yeah, we were just having fun.
You were not, I can confirm, you were not initiating the high five.
No.
I was looking. I would literally have high-fived anybody that was around me. No offense to anyone else, but I was that guy.
Last year, I'm in the same box for Ohio State, Oregon.
Yes.
Except the others in the box was Neil Everett, Dan Fouts, so all Oregon people.
No.
So we sat there like this and watched the game.
Different vibe, huh?
My kids came to me like the middle of the third quarter, and they were like, "Hey, should we leave?"
By the
And
way.
I was like, "Yeah, we might need to leave."
If kids are wondering about beating traffic, that's how much of a blowout it was, I'm sure.
It was a blowout. I can't even remember where I started to what question I was trying.
No, I was talking about Milroe, obviously.
Oh, that's right. Milroe. Let me get back to Milroe.
Sure.
So he had developed into that Rose Bowl game. And this last year, I thought Kalen DeBoer was a good fit for him.
Yeah.
Because Kalen had been with Michael Penix all the way back to Indiana. And Penix initially was a bit of a dual threat, had some of those knee injuries that we talked about last year. And then once he got him at Washington, he had developed into just an incredible downfield passer. Incredible downfield. As good of a downfield passer as we've had in the draft in a long time. And I thought that Jalen might reap the benefit of some of that development. But in 1 year, it was just too quick. I would have loved to have seen him have a second year with Kalen. Because it's a real projection right now from just the quarterback acumen. As far as the athletic ability, he is, outside of Travis, the guy that you can put on the field that's immediately the best athlete on the field. And so that's why he's a great lottery ticket, because if you see some of the development from a quarterback perspective, then you got something very special that every defense is going to be incredibly afraid of. But it's more of a projection. Shedeur can start tomorrow in the National Football League. Jalen Milroe cannot.
Your favorite draft choice of last night before I let you go?
Favorite draft choice?
Yes, sir.
Oh, gosh. Man, it's really tough not to say Jacksonville. It's really tough not to say Jacksonville.
Right? I mean, they went ahead and did it.
Yeah.
They were the ones who got aggressive.
They got aggressive. They got a guy that we know. I'm telling you right now, this kid is a total unicorn. And people are going to be shocked. People thought there's no way he's going to do this in the, major college football, in the FBS, coming from Jackson State. Not only did he do it, he was dominant. And it won't surprise me at all if he's dominant again in the National Football League. And then my next favorite pick was, of course, the Eagles sticking to philosophy. I talked about those 3 lanes, right? You either provide answers, you solidify philosophy, or you create questions. And here's Philadelphia solidifying philosophy, and they get Jihad Campbell with a great value pick just because he slid due to injury concerns, which he had surgery on a labrum. That will heal. Man, Philly, if I'm in the East, meanwhile, the Giants draft a 3rd quarterback. What do we...
Joel Klatt, baby.
I mean, am I wrong?
I mean, but before I let you go, how does it work in Jacksonville, do you think? Because you know how Dion made it work.
Here's how it's going to work.
How's it going to work?
They're going to have a plan on paper.
Yes.
And everyone's going to be like, yeah, this is a great plan. Start him out at wide receiver, and we'll dabble with him on the defensive side. They're going to go out for the first practice. Then they're going to walk back in after the first practice, and the defensive coordinator is going to be like, I want him. I want him right now. And then the offensive coordinator is going to be like, absolutely not. I want him. And it's going to be on Liam and the brass there to be like, no, we have a plan and we're going to stick to it. And he's going to play both ways. So the fortitude that Liam is going to have to – this is the reason – sorry, I know we're probably up
go
against
ahead.
This is the reason why Dion was so important to Travis when he selected to go to Jackson State out of high school, because the head coach has to have massive amount of courage and fortitude to fight the media saying you can't play him that many snaps, and the defensive coordinator saying I have to have him on Tuesday and Wednesday, and the offensive coordinator saying no, I need him in my room. You've got to have an amazing amount of fortitude and courage as a coach to say no. I know what he can do, and this is what he's going to do. This is why Dion was so key for Travis Hunter. We don't have Travis Hunter without Coach Prime, period. Because every other coach in the country would have folded like a cheap suit to all the pressure from everybody around him, whether it was media or other coaches. So that's what's going to happen in Jacksonville. Immense amount of pressure on Liam Cohen about, well, where's he playing? Whose meeting room is he in? And he's going to get asked that all the time. So I would just suggest, you better have a plan. And you have some fortitude and courage to you in terms of sticking to that plan.
Joel Klatt, everybody.
All right.
Hold on.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.